So we are Global Emergency Response and Assistance. You can go.
Nothing's happening.
We're having technical difficulties. There we go. So about Global Emergency Response and Assistance, we're a community-based organization based in New Jersey and California. And over the last 10 years, we have supported over 12,000 refugees. And our mission is to support those affected by conflict and to ensure their human dignity. And we support those affected by conflict emotionally, physically, and make sure that they have everything that they need to succeed in their new environments. So over the past years, like I mentioned, we've supported over 12,000 refugees from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Afghanistan, Syria, and all over the world. And our goal is to make sure that refugees have the agency to succeed and to really thrive in their new environments.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Firishta Tayeb, and I am the advisor for GERA. Valeria is one of the co-founders, and Sophia is our program manager. It is a pleasure, esteemed honor to be in front of you today to be able to discuss some of the challenges. I always say, no matter what space I'm in, that the youth is our biggest investment. The youth is the future and are those that are going to carry the legacies of our organizations, of all the different agencies and all of the different issues that we have. Next slide. We want to talk first a little bit about inequality. Inequality can take place whether it's an issue that has to do with youth, whether it's an issue that has to do with specific special populations. And today that's going to be really what we're going to be talking about. It's really important to know and understand that globally, refugees face significant barriers, especially due to forced displacement. Refugees are not people that wake up in the morning and are asked and just decide to go from one place to another. There are terrible circumstances that lead them to be to where they are. And these issues make inequalities and restrict opportunities for any type of mobility or transition. There's going to be four major things that we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be talking about education access. We're going to talk about skill building chances. We're going to talk about mental health support and community integration. No matter what society we live in, integration, especially on a holistic level, is going to be the key. Next slide. There are three things that I always talk about. I'm a trauma-informed cultural advisor. What does that mean? That means that there's three basic things that people need to feel emotionally resilient. People need to feel seen. People need to feel heard. And what's the last one? Seen.
I heard loved.
Loved.
Valued.
Valued. Okay. Respected. Engaged. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes, all of these things. And in order for a human being to feel those feelings, and in order for a human being to feel resilient, they need to possess those qualities. And the only way we can do that is if we provide our refugee youth emotional support. A lot of the times the focus is going to be on the parents, on the adults, and small children. The youth, somewhere in the middle, they're just expected to learn. They're just expected to be resilient, right? But how resilient really are we? How resilient are our youth, right? We want to make sure that we have, in the safe spaces that we provide the refugees, we want to make sure that we are trained in the culture. We want to have cultural competency trainings. Does anybody in this group know what a cultural competency training is?
What?
A cultural competency training. Yes. What is it?
Can I explain?
Sure.
I'm Ophelia from Armenia.
Okay.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for your speeches. Yeah, I'm leading intercultural projects with an NGO as a volunteer program manager. And in culture, like intercultural competency is like when you are depending on where you are, like in your country or you are a migrant and you need this socialization, exchanging cultures. Yeah, and this competency is something that doesn't work somehow because if you're a refugee, you're lacking the rule of law, the rights, and then this competency is disbalanced. So this is needed to do like further monitoring based on this competency. Now, do monitoring, to rebuild these competencies of refugees in other countries, taking into consideration their human rights protection and their empowerment.
Thank you so much. Yes, correct. In 2021, the government of Kabul in Afghanistan fell. And we had what was called Operation Allies Welcome. And all of us here, including GERA, was involved in that. And one of the main things that we did as an organization is that we went to safe spaces, schools, places where youth are playing, we're working, and we taught these folks about our culture. Because if you don't have cultural humility and an understanding, you will not be able to bridge that gap. Bridging that gap means understanding a people, understanding their language, understanding their culture, understanding. And if you don't understand it, get a qualified interpreter, right? You always want to make sure that that happens so that that person feels, if I bring a glass of green tea for an Afghan, then they know that you understand something about my culture because we drink green tea. You've already broken the first barrier. You want to do this with the youth. You want to make sure that a school understands what a youth that just came to this country is going through. They look different. They dress different. They don't have the same opportunities. They may be wearing hand-me-downs that were handed down 3 times over, right? We want to be aware of these things. We want to make sure that if there's red flags in our communities and in these safe spaces, let's say a youth is in an ESL class, this is a safe space, and there's an issue that arises. Is that teacher equipped to deal with that issue? How is that teacher going to move forward? It is our job as a community and as organizations to make sure these spaces understand and are going to be cultural brokers and are going to mediate. And if they cannot, they must know who to reach out to. One of us, next slide, please. That moves me on to the next topic, which is happening a lot. Since 2021, there was 80,000 Afghan refugees who were brought into 8 military bases to have a temporary safe haven. From there, they were then sent to resettlement over 48 states in the US. And once these people were relocated throughout the US, we started to get phone calls, organizations like ours. So-and-so is being bullied. So-and-so is a bully. So-and-so was suspended. So we're getting on these calls, we're getting involved with these schools and saying things like, let's take a rehabilitation approach. Let's help folks heal from the trauma and the wounds that they have gone throughout this journey, rather than punishing them and taking a punitive approach. We should be here to hold hands with one another and assist in that healing process. Folks are being bullied based on many things, not just the fact that they're a refugee. There are issues that they're coming in with. Could you imagine that right here, right now, the way that the world stands, we're all sitting here, 24 hours, you're in your bed and you receive a phone call telling you that you have 24 hours to grab a plastic bag, take all your belongings, throw it in there, and then you're going to get on a plane and you don't know where you're going to go. You're not going to know where you're going to live. You don't know what your children's future education is going to look like, right? So these folks, they have, if you ever get a chance, I want you to look up the triple trauma paradigm. There is a pre-flight migration process that happens in the countries that these folks are from. There is an in-flight throughout the journey of trauma that they go to. And then finally, once they get to their country that they're going to be resettling in, there is all of this type of trauma, right? It is our job, and my colleagues are going to discuss how that's going to happen, but just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the number one issue that's being faced right now by our refugee youth is mental health. And it is each and every person in this room's responsibility to ensure that we are the agents that help heal and not hurt.
I don't know how someone speaks after that, how eloquent that was. First, as an expert in the area that she's discussed, she's traveled the whole country. She's been requested by the Department of Homeland Security and even small organizations all across the country. So she's constantly traveling and fully understands the subject matter. My name is Sophia Wadat. I am the program manager at GERA. Again, we stand for Global Emergency Response and Assistance. I came on shortly after the fall of Kabul, but I was involved with the organization as a volunteer before that. To further continue the conversation that's affecting the refugee youth, right? They often experience interrupted education during that process of migration, right? And we have to see that once they are resettled in their countries, in their new countries, we have to look at education as a foundation for opportunity for them. And we have pointed out 3 different opportunities to do that, right? One way is to partner schools with NGOs. Another one is promoting multilingual education. And another one, a final one, is remote learning, right? So partnering schools with NGOs like ours, like GERA, schools can work with GERA to provide, or organizations like GERA, to provide refugee youth with access to formal and informal education. What is formal education? Formal education is the student goes into their classroom, kindergarten through 12th grade, and sits in the classroom and learns like everyone else. Informal education, our programs that GERA, for example, has is we have after school help. We have ESL classes, right? So for smaller towns and cities that don't have ESL programs, organizations like GERA do have ESL programs that we can tailor to the population. So for example, we just had an ESL class graduate yesterday for us, and that was a huge victory for us. It takes months of preparation. It takes time to create the programs. It takes time to register individuals interested in the programs, and then it takes the time to actually put on the programs, right? And it's a huge accomplishment, not just for the organization. It's a huge accomplishment for the teachers and the instructors and the assistants that are putting on the programs, but it also is a huge accomplishment for the individuals attending those classes, because they come in with a limited knowledge and they leave with much more. And what we found is that besides learning the language, we've also built up their confidence, the confidence of the individuals taking those classes, right? And then, you know, NGOs like ours in an informal setting, we can take more time to connect with individuals, right? Besides just giving an ESL class, we find that a lot of the individuals taking those classes, the youth taking those classes, they connect with their teachers a little bit better. There's a less intimidation in a formal setting. It's like you sitting with your peers and they all have their education and they all have their language abilities. But in a setting like that, it's less intimidating for them, and they are able to connect with their teachers, and the teachers can then provide other means of support for them, right? So for example, in promoting multilingual education, we are based in Paterson, New Jersey. And Paterson, New Jersey is an extremely diverse city. There's over 44 schools in Paterson, and there's something like 40,000 different people from different countries in Paterson. Paterson has an area called Little Ramallah, which is a majority Palestinian or Arab immigrants. There's a Bangladeshi area. There's an Armenian area. There's an enclave called Little Lima for Peruvians. So the the benefit that Patterson has is that because we have all these little enclaves of different types of cultures, they have also been able to create programming specific for those students, right? They have been able to create a program like their newcomers program or their magnet program. And the magnet program provides native language instruction in coordination with that formal education. So before the students get integrated into the formal education, they take subject matters or based on their level of understanding. If they're kindergarten, then they have kindergarten learning in their native language, and then they get integrated into the schools. So Patterson has that advantage, but a lot of these cities and towns don't. And that's where organizations like GERA and other NGOs can come in to assist, right? And then finally, there's remote learning. And remote learning is important in a lot of ways, right? So the area that I see that remote learning would be most helpful is in that middle portion that Frishta discussed, right? There's the pre-flight and then the mid-flight. That mid-flight is a journey that could take, it's not just getting on a plane from one country and landing at another country. That journey could take, in the case of Afghans, we saw nearly 2 years, right? Where they're in bases, they went from Kabul to bases in Qatar and Germany until they finally resettled in the US. So there's nearly 2 years of education lost for these youth, right? And so an area to allay that is to have downloadable lessons that are accessible to mobile phones or digital devices. Almost everyone has a cell phone, right? With some sort of connection to data. So either they connect through Wi-Fi or whatever. So cloud-based programming may not help, but downloadable, accessible files could help. And what then that happens is that it allows the students to create their own communities, right? Because maybe not all of them have mobile phones, maybe not all of them have digital devices, but at least one does. And then they can share those lessons with the students around them, and it becomes a community that they create for themselves, right? Which leads me to converting international credit. So we're talking about the younger youth mostly in these things, but there are older students that take specialized education courses in their native countries that they cannot bring those credits into the United States, right? We have 18-year-olds doing ninth grade level work here in the United States with the students that we've worked with, just because they weren't able to transfer their credits, right? So there's this program called the Groningen, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, declaration, and the goal is to equalize education to learners across the globe through micro-credentialing. It provides interoperability and portability of educational credits, which is exactly what we're talking about, right? They're able to take those lessons in their home countries or in transit from their home countries to their resettled countries and gain credits for them so that they can use those and apply it to their new countries. So one case study that I'd like, this is not a youth, she's an older woman, but she has an advanced degree in engineering. And she came from, originally from Syria, through Lebanon, through Jordan, until she finally made it to the United States. With her advanced degree in engineering, she cannot get a job here in the United States for 2 reasons. Reason number one is her credits aren't transferring here, right? So they're not accepting her education. She would have to take additional education in order for her to be able to fulfill her career here. Secondly, she can't even get a retail job because when she sends in her application or her resume and they see his background, they say she's overqualified for the job and they refuse her the job in that way. So now this woman is stuck in the middle. And this can happen, across ages, right? So this is a very important matter that needs to be addressed, and something like the Groningen Declaration, I believe, is a start. Another way is skill building and mentorship. Again, these are for the older youth, right? Focusing on vocational training and digital literacy and entrepreneurship. So I'll give another study. I'm the daughter of refugees. I was born and raised in this country, but my parents were refugees, and my husband was a refugee. And I can tell you firsthand how vocational training helped us, took my family out of poverty in the United States. And they came in the 1980s before there was programs and resettlement agencies and all these different declarations that I think Ronald Reagan had put in. And they had no opportunities because they had no language and they had nobody to help them. But vocational training helped my father go and become a plumber, right? He went and he got certified in plumbing. My husband in heating and air conditioning. And it literally picked us and my family up out of poverty and brought us to be able to live a fulfilling life here in the United States, right? And then to have, I'm very involved with refugees, and then I'm grateful that my husband has been getting involved also. He's able to now create a mentorship program. He mentors others who are arriving here to the United States, and informally, not through an organization. He's doing it mostly with the clients that I bring into our home. And he tells them that, hey, there's opportunities that you can do. And then I also have connections in the industry to help you. So having mentorship, maybe in a more formalized setting, would probably be a better way, but we do this, right? And it also promotes self-reliance. They become entrepreneurs. They become skilled in an area, and it allows them to feel that confidence to move forward.
So thank you, Sophia. And now I want to talk about community integration. And this is my favorite part because most of the time when we talk about refugees and their problems, people wonder, like, what can I do as an individual? I am not in the policy space. I'm not in a school. I cannot teach these ESL classes. But that's where, you're all here because you're leaders in your communities. You're all youth leaders. And I think that's the most important thing, community integration. We heard from Freshta how, supporting pathways for refugee youth includes helping them mentally, helping them feel that they're no longer isolated, like they belong. And here's where you can take a part in. If you're in college, create a group that welcomes refugees. If you're in high school, help work with refugees that are coming into your school. And I want to ask all of you here how you envision working with refugees in your communities, or if any of you here has had an opportunity to welcome refugees and to promote cultural integration and belonging. Yes, please introduce.
My name is Dira Tuklop. So regards to Afghans refugees, I'm originally from Nigeria, but I live in Minnesota. So one day I was driving down the street and I saw this group of family on the corner side of the road. But like you just indicated that this lady had a degree, but because she didn't obtain a degree from the US, so she couldn't work. Likewise, this guy, he said he worked, I think 4 or 5 years with the US government. He's a scientific engineer, but he couldn't get any job. And he told me, as a person, he said, brother, you're the first person that ever stopped off your car to walk to me to be able to hand me a dime. You make me feel like human. So I was thinking to myself how the little things we can do for people that we just don't know have a huge impact. Because imagine with all the degrees and study, let us reduce into the side of the road to be able to beg for bread just for he and his family to eat. So my question to you guys, people that have those kind of situations that have degrees, they are qualified, but there is no way to get the job for which they obtain in this community. How can your organization help them in those spaces?
If you don't.
Oh, go ahead.
So there are programs here in the United States. I'm going to give the acronyms. It's called AICE, and there's also NACES, National Association of Credential Evaluation Services. So these two programs look at the credentials and the things that the individuals have and see how it applies here to the United States. And usually it requires an additional time for education, which again, there's a lot of barriers to that because education in the United States is expensive. So then you would have to go in and find funding for them either through scholarships or other means. So it is a multi-step process, but it could be done. It's just, again, it's very difficult to do. So a lot of people don't take that route.
And that's one of the issues, you see that, converting credits is one of the things that has a lot of bureaucratic red tape. And while, that's why we focus on a holistic approach. We work on the policy issues with the governments, with the schools to break through that red tape. And the other part of this holistic approach is community integration. How frustrating must it be to be an engineer and to not be able to practice, to not be able to get a job that you want, and to not to be able to carry on your career. And having that peer support, having that community that will be there for you, that will make you feel welcome, you'll have a neighbor, is extremely important. And that's why the part that I think I want to emphasize the most, because all of you as leaders can make someone feel welcome. And in the next slide, if you see,
Valeria, I'm going to add one more thing. Sorry to cut you off. As far as, this family, just going back to this case study, when OAW happened, we went to Governor Murphy's office and we asked to be recognized as the New Jersey Coalition for Afghan Refugees. We brought together 20 organizations across the state of New Jersey under one umbrella for one goal, and that was to help families like this. What came from that? It's still standing, it's still working, it's so beautiful. So we've got one organization, this family, we found them. What are we going to do for them? One organization will have a meeting about it. One organization will say, okay, we'll take care of food security. We have a food pantry. Send them to our food pantry. The other organization will say, you know what? We do jobs. We also look toward the community. We have a database of who owns the tailor shop, who's the mechanic, who can we, and it may not be A to A. The match may not be A to A, but you know what? If you were a doctor, you still want to work in a hospital, we can start you off as a clinical associate, and that hospital will pay for you to become an RN because you don't want to repeat 13 years of education, right? So there are ways of going around it, but this is key. This is the key point. And Valeria, please continue.
The next slide, Sophia, please. So talking about how you can support them in specific ways, peer support, like facilitate groups that bring refugees into your community and allows them to talk freely and to have that friendship with other people. And then leadership programs. Who here has heard of the Afghan robotics team? Afghan robotics team?
The girls' robotics team.
Yes. What about the Afghan dreamers? Oh, yes. So this is a group of girls aged between 12 and 18 who were working in STEMs and had a robotics team in Afghanistan. And when the fall of Afghanistan happened, they were forced to evacuate. And I believe they were sent to Qatar and then Mexico. And there's actually a movie about them and their work. And we have offices in California. And our director in California started a robotics team for Afghan girls to encourage their own leadership. They have all these skills that they acquired from back home. And how can we support their leadership? Not just integrating them and including them, but for them to be leaders in their field. So we do have an Afghan robotics team, a girls team, because we want to promote girls in STEM. And we have, I believe, over 100 participants in that robotics group. And we want refugees themselves to be the leaders. We want them to be the ones leading these clubs. And also the other point is agents of change. All of you here are leaders, and all of you are agents of change in your community. We want refugees to also become agents of change and to be included in community decisions. We want them to be at the table, be talking about the solutions, and provide their own perspective, their own lived experiences, and to contribute to that conversation, not passively, but actively, for them to be the ones finding the solutions and finding the answers to problems and to conversations that include them. And that's one of the things, if you have been following the UNGA, there's a lot of talk about not without us, not having these conversations that affect us without us. And so that's something that as a youth, you should promote, not having these conversations about the future of the refugee program in the US without including refugees, without including their lived experiences and their needs. So definitely peer support and leadership. We can go to the next. So the most important part, I hope that you get from this conversation, is the call to action. We should all be working together to create opportunity. And as Preston and Sophia mentioned, a holistic view. Mental health, peer support, learning are all important. And we cannot just focus on one without neglecting the other. And then working together. Like as an NGO, we reach out to different organizations. We work with schools, we work with local leaders, we work with politicians, we work with civil society, because it takes all of us to make sure that refugees have these pathways to succeed. And that includes all of you here in this room, and I hope that you will join us in this work. And then, just to keep in touch, this is our email and our website. We're also very active on Instagram, so if you guys want to hear about our work, support our work, we're always looking to get in touch, and even partnerships of how can GERA support your work that you're already doing in your communities. So thank you for having us.
Do we have time for questions?
We have 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes.
Can I?
Yes, yes.
My question is, you spoke about mental health, education, healthy food, and learning and everything. So my question is, how do you balance all these aspects in the whole umbrella? Like, what's your kind of key mechanism? Because learning includes self-learning, empowering, online learning, offline learning. Yeah, the same with health. It includes healthy lifestyle, healthy cooking, healthy meals, school meals, and mental health includes like kind of mechanism like meditation, going to the nature, living in the nature, sharing bodies, and so on and so forth. So what's your primary key component of all this umbrella? Like you have many inclusions under one umbrella. Your goal is to help refugees to get socialized, interculturalized, and to become part of the whole.
Well, we at GERA are very lucky to have a lot of community help, right? We have a lot of volunteers that help us. Again, we are based in Patterson, so we're lucky that we have a very multicultural, Patterson, New Jersey, yes. So we are very lucky to have a very multicultural, very diverse community around us, right? With all different types. I think 44,000 languages are spoken in Patterson alone, right? Wow. Or sorry, 44,000 individuals speaking different languages. Sorry, that's a lot of languages.
That's possible.
Yeah. So they're very involved in the community. We are very lucky to have all different types of people with all different backgrounds that come and assist us. So, for example, when the fall of Afghanistan initially happened, we had a huge influx of Afghan volunteers to come in, who kind of bridged that gap between, I'm American citizen, I was raised here, I understand the culture, but I also understand Afghan culture, and I'm able to walk you through this, right? Interconnected. Yes, with the Syrians, it was the same. With the Venezuelans and the Nicaraguans, and
also Armenian community.
Yeah, there's an Armenian community. Yeah, I saw their tag.
Armenian.
Yeah, there's an Armenian community in Patterson. Yeah. We're very blessed to be very, very intercultural. Yes, I love Armenians. We have a lot of Armenian friends, and we know a lot of.
I also will add one more point to that. One more point. As Sophia said, having all of this, I think coalition building is very important.
Yeah. This is just to summarize. For me, these all SDGs are like, okay, but I can create 70 more SDGs. But the most important is education, 16, no wars, no conflicts, and 17. So I said, let's plus it. Number 4, number 17, and number 16. It makes 37. I create 37 SDGs right now. Why? Because if you are educated, even if you're not born yet, your mother should take care, and then in kindergarten, in the family, in the school, in the university. If it works well, yeah, but everyone is happy with me because so I finished. Give me 1 second.
All right. What happened?
Yeah. Number 4. So if it's okay, then we go to partnerships, cooperations, communication. Yes, we are given word by the Lord, so we need to communicate, we need to cooperate. And if we have this, we will have reached to the peace No wars, no conflicts.
Yeah.
So
Thank
Thank you.
Next question. Next question. Any question?
I believe there was one question.
I was the one to struggle for questions.
Okay.
I'm very sorry.
Thank you all for the putting the community together. The area of where people will have a master's degree or PhD in another country and coming to another country to be able to work for life, and they have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's something that really affects all the nation. How you address that with the conversion of degree? I would like to know more about that because in my community I have a lot of that. Thank you.
So again, there's these programs, these national programs that convert credits, right? You can go to those websites. You can actually even go to local universities, and they'll tell you based on those guidelines that those organizations have, whether they can or cannot accept it.
I can provide one example of a case study very quickly. I know we're short on time. There is a OBGYN doctor who came. She needed assistance. So we did link her up with the local university. They were able to convert not as much as a doctor, but enough to make her clinical associate. But now she's working in the hospital, and the hospital is working with her to get her become an RN. So there are ways around it. But also remembering that those folks really struggle with their mental health because they feel a loss of identity. I was a doctor. I was an engineer. So, there's going to be that mental health element that's going to be the overlying theme of everything.
And one thing I will add quickly is also advocating for this. Not all schools will accept transfer credits, but Columbia University, Seton Hall University, these are universities in New Jersey and New York who are creating programs for refugees to sort of tailor to their needs. So advocating for your local schools to support refugees is something that can be done.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for those wonderful questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get everybody's questions, but that's our time, yeah?
Yeah, but if anyone has additional questions, you can mingle with them on.
Outside.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Real quick, everybody, here's a quick announcement. For anybody who wants a certificate, they'll be distributed at 4 o'clock in person. Those are not here in person, they'll receive the certificate online. So I'm gonna pass this around. Please write